The English Channel, July 28, 1996. A fisherman sets out on what he expects to be an ordinary day at sea. The waves are calm, the air is heavy with the familiar scent of salt water, and the horizon stretches endless before him. But as he casts his net, something catches his eye, something that shouldn't be there. A lifeless body, drifting in the water, weighed down by an anchor. The man he pulls from the depths is a stranger with no identification, no signs of struggle, nothing to tell the world who he was or why he ended up here. Except for one thing. A watch. This wasn't just any watch. It was a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, its hands frozen in time at the exact moment it met the water. A timepiece known for precision and durability, qualities that would soon prove essential in unraveling a mystery no one could have imagined. As investigators examined the body, they found no clues to the man's identity, no wallet, no phone, no papers. Yet, the watch remained. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a storyteller, holding secrets in its serial numbers and service history. Who was this man? How had he ended up at the bottom of the channel, tethered to an anchor like some ghastly secret meant to stay buried forever? And what would the Rolex reveal about his final moments? Little did anyone know, this single object would lead investigators across oceans, through layers of deception, and straight into the clutches of a man named Albert Walker. A man whose charm and cunning had allowed him to wear two faces, live two lives, and steal another's identity completely. Today, we tell the story of Ronald Platt, a quiet man whose life ended in betrayal, and Albert Walker, the trusted friend who became his killer. This is not just a story about murder. It's a story about lies, manipulation, and the meticulous attention to detail that cracked the case wide open. Ronald Platt was a man who lived a quiet life. In his late 40s, he was a man of routine, unassuming and kind-hearted. Born and raised in England, he worked as a small business owner, repairing and selling antique clocks, a fitting trade for someone who valued precision and timeless craftsmanship. For those who knew him, Ronald wasn't the type to seek the spotlight. He preferred the peace of small villages, surrounded by rolling hills and the steady rhythm of the countryside. But life hadn't been easy for Ronald. After a series of business ventures that didn't quite take off, he found himself at a crossroads. That's when Albert Johnson Walker entered his life, a man who, on the surface, seemed to offer opportunity and friendship. Albert was everything Ronald was not. Charismatic, confident, and worldly, Albert seemed to have the Midas touch when it came to business. To Ronald, Albert appeared as a mentor and a friend, someone to trust, someone to rely on. But Albert Johnson Walker was not the man he pretended to be. Born in Canada, he had built a reputation as a successful businessman, running an investment firm that promised high returns and financial security. Behind the polished exterior, however, was a man fleeing his past. In the early 1990s, Albert disappeared from Canada, leaving behind a trail of embezzlement and fraud, along with a family he would never see again. By the time he met Ronald, he was a fugitive living under false identities, manipulating everyone he encountered. To Ronald, Albert's story was simple: a businessman relocating to Europe to expand his ventures. But to Albert, Ronald was more than a friend. He was a means to an end. The morning of July 28, 1996, began like any other for a fisherman on the English Channel. The waters were calm, the nets ready to cast. But as he worked, something unusual caught his attention. At first, it seemed like debris floating in the water, a dark, heavy shape drifting just beneath the surface. As he steered his boat closer, the truth became horrifyingly clear. A man's lifeless body was tethered to an anchor, suspended in the cold, murky depths of the channel. The fisherman notified the police, who arrived to recover the body. It was that of a middle-aged man, dressed casually, with no identifying documents, no wallet, and no clue as to who he was. The only thing that seemed out of place was the watch still strapped to his wrist, a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, its hands stopped at 10:25. It was a haunting detail, one that would prove more significant than anyone could have imagined. Authorities were left with a chilling puzzle. Who was this man? Why had he been tied to an anchor and left to drown in the channel? And, perhaps most unsettling of all, what kind of person would go to such lengths to ensure his body was never found? Investigators were determined to uncover the truth, but with no ID, no personal belongings, and no immediate leads, they faced a daunting task. Their only clue? The Rolex watch, its intricate mechanisms frozen in time. Little did they know, this timepiece would unlock a story of betrayal, stolen identities, and cold-blooded murder. What secrets would the Rolex reveal? And how would it lead them to the truth about Ronald Platt's death? The answers were as shocking as the crime itself. In most murder investigations, the discovery of a victim's identity relies on personal documents, fingerprints, or missing persons reports. But in this case, all those avenues led to dead ends. The body in the English Channel had no wallet, no papers, and no fingerprints in any police database. What it did have was a watch, a Rolex Oyster Perpetual, still strapped to the victim's wrist. And it was this watch, more than anything else, that became the key to unlocking the mystery. Rolex, known for its precision and durability, is also known for its meticulous record-keeping. Every time a Rolex is serviced or repaired, the serial number is recorded, creating a traceable history of the watch's ownership. Investigators focused on this clue, carefully documenting the serial number and sending the information to Rolex headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. The response was swift and surprising. The watch had been sold in the UK over 2 decades earlier, and service records traced its ownership directly to one man, Ronald Platt. With this breakthrough, the victim finally had a name. Ronald Joseph Platt, a British man in his late 40s, was identified as the man recovered from the Channel. But even with his identity confirmed, the questions only deepened. Ronald's family had not reported him missing, and there were no immediate signs of foul play in his life. To uncover the truth, police turned their attention to those closest to him, and one name surfaced repeatedly: Albert Johnson Walker. The relationship between Ronald Platt and Albert Walker was, on the surface, a straightforward friendship. Ronald had trusted Albert with business ventures and considered him a confidant. But as investigators delved deeper, they uncovered a shocking betrayal. When police visited Ronald's last known address, they were surprised to find not Ronald, but Albert Walker, living there under Ronald's name. Walker had been using Ronald's identity for years, opening bank accounts, conducting business, and building a life entirely based on stolen credentials. Walker even carried Ronald's personal identification, presenting it as his own when needed. But why? The answer lay in Walker's past. Years earlier, Albert Walker had been a respected Canadian businessman running a financial investment firm. But his empire crumbled when he was accused of defrauding dozens of clients out of millions of dollars. Facing prison time, Walker fled Canada in 1990, abandoning his wife and 4 children, taking his youngest daughter with him, and disappearing into Europe. When Ronald Platt unknowingly crossed paths with him, Walker saw an opportunity. Albert Walker's scheme was as audacious as it was cruel. Using Ronald Platt's identity, he rebuilt his life while ensuring his fugitive past stayed hidden. 4 years, Walker maintained this charade, convincing Ronald to leave England under the guise of new business opportunities abroad. With Ronald out of the picture, Walker had free rein to assume his identity. But in the summer of 1996, Ronald returned to the UK, unknowingly jeopardizing Walker's carefully constructed facade. It was a decision that would cost him his life. What followed was a calculated act of betrayal. Investigators determined that Walker lured Ronald out on his boat under the pretense of a casual outing. Once they were far from shore, Walker struck, rendering Ronald unconscious and tying an anchor to his body before casting him into the channel's dark waters. It was a meticulous effort to ensure the body would never be found, a plan that might have succeeded had it not been for the Rolex. Forensic analysis of the crime scene and the body corroborated the chilling details. The anchor recovered with Ronald's body was traced back to Walker's boat, further cementing his role in the crime. Autopsy reports confirmed drowning as the cause of death, with no struggle or defensive wounds, suggesting Ronald was incapacitated before being thrown into the water. Witness accounts also played a critical role. Friends and acquaintances of Walker recalled small inconsistencies in his story, details that didn't quite add up, strange behavior, and a growing sense that something was amiss. One neighbor reported seeing Walker cleaning his boat meticulously in the days following Ronald's disappearance. Another recalled how Walker often spoke of Ronald as if he were still alive, even after the time frame when Ronald was last seen. Piece by piece, the evidence painted a damning portrait of Albert Walker, a man who had not only stolen a life but also taken one. With the Rolex serving as the linchpin, investigators were ready to confront the man who had lived for years in the shadows of another's identity. Ronald Joseph Platt was more than the victim of a heinous crime. He was a son, a brother, and a friend, a man who, like so many of us, hoped for a better future. Ronald was known for his quiet demeanor and gentle nature, someone who valued trust and loyalty above all else. He had dreams of building a successful business, of finding stability in life after years of hard work. Those dreams were what brought him into the orbit of Albert Walker, a man he believed could help him achieve those goals. To those who knew Ronald, his friendship with Walker seemed like a stroke of good fortune. Albert was charming and seemingly well-connected, a mentor who offered guidance and opportunity. For Ronald, trusting Albert wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. In a world where the complexities of business often felt overwhelming, Albert appeared to be a steady hand, a reliable ally. Ronald couldn't have known that this trust would ultimately lead to his undoing. The betrayal of that trust is what makes Ronald's story so profoundly tragic. He believed in the goodness of someone who had no intention of reciprocating. Albert Walker didn't just take Ronald's identity. He took his life, his future, and the love he shared with those closest to him. For Ronald's family, the loss was immeasurable. They had no reason to suspect Albert of any wrongdoing. To them, he was Ronald's business partner, someone who was helping him navigate the challenges of life. The revelation that Albert had orchestrated such a cruel betrayal was devastating. "We never imagined the person he trusted most would take everything from him," one family member later shared. Ronald didn't deserve this. He was kind, loyal, and always willing to lend a hand. To know that his trust was used against him in such a horrible way, it's something we'll never fully come to terms with. Their grief was compounded by the knowledge that Ronald's death wasn't a random act of violence, but a calculated betrayal by someone who had shared meals with them, laughed with them, and stood beside Ronald as a so-called friend. Ronald Platt's story is one of trust misplaced, dreams stolen, and a life cut tragically short. It's a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how devastating its betrayal is. While Albert Walker's crimes shocked the world, it was Ronald and his family who bore the brunt of the pain that lingers long after the headlines have faded. And for Ronald's loved ones, the memory of his kindness and his unwavering belief in the good of others remains both a comfort and a haunting reminder of the man they lost. Albert Walker's story is one of deception, betrayal, and cold calculation. But what if a conman's lies didn't just target one person, but an entire community? What if the very foundation of trust in a town was built on a web of deceit? In our next episode, we uncover the extraordinary tale of a man who not only stole millions but managed to convince an entire town that he was someone he wasn't. A master manipulator who turned neighbor against neighbor and left devastation in his wake. How did he do it? How did one man charm his way into the hearts of so many, only to betray them all? And what was the moment that unraveled his elaborate scheme? Find out next time as we explore the shocking case of a conman whose lies weren't just personal, they were communal. This is a story you won't want to miss. If Ronald Platt's story has gripped you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next twist-filled tale from gripping true crime. And while you're here, share your thoughts on Albert Walker's shocking betrayal in the comments below. How do you think someone could live a double life so convincingly? We'd love to hear from you. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to Gripping True Crime. your destination for real stories of mystery, betrayal, and justice. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when we uncover our next case. And if this story captivates you, give us a like. It helps us bring more stories to light. What do you think so far? Could someone you trust be living a double life? Let us know in the comments below. Your theories might surprise us all. And remember, if this story has you hooked, tap that like button. It tells us you want more true crime stories just like this one. The Rolex watch was the clue that cracked the case wide open. But here's a question for you. How often do you think a single object has been pivotal in solving a crime? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you're as fascinated by this case as we are, you'll want to stick around for the resolution. Justice is on the horizon. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. Ronald Platt's story is a powerful reminder of how easily trust can be manipulated. What would you do if someone you trusted turned out to be your worst enemy? Share your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, a like helps us honor Ronald's memory and the lessons his case teaches. If you thought this story was gripping, just wait until you hear what's next. Subscribe, like, and turn on that bell icon so you don't miss a second of our next case. And remember, your theories and comments make these stories even more compelling. Join the discussion below.